What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In the last video, I showed y'all how to take your Forum Novelties Jester blank and turn it into a clean Ozzfest conversion here. Now I'm going to show you how to take your clean Ozzfest and turn it into this, the weathered, rotting Ozzfest. Let's go ahead and get that started.
Alright guys, to achieve that rotting Ozzfest look, we're going to need to do the weathering in a few stages. The first stage is going to be a little bit of black makeup weathering. You're going to need a few things for that. One of them is some black face paint. I like to use these Mayron Color Cup grease paints. You're also going to need a paintbrush with some bristles cut down so they're a little stiffer. Makes it a little bit easier to get the makeup and stuff on there. So what I typically tend to do is I just dab a little bit of makeup on my brush, smear a little bit of it off, and then go on the mask and just kind of smudge a little bit on there and just kind of smear it around with your finger a little bit. By all means, if you don't get the look you want, just dip your finger in a little bit of water like shown here and just kind of smudge it around until you get the look that you're happy with. If you went on a little bit too heavy, that's okay. You can take a paper towel and dab a little bit off like I just showed you. After you do all of that, you should be left with this pretty natural look for the weathering. Not too much, not too little, and it definitely looks like some makeup was smudged and then washed off and then smudged on again, just how Slipknot's masks would have been treated at the time. So go ahead and take your brush and just kind of repeat that all over the mask. Don't worry if you smear a little bit too much on like this. You can just take a little bit of water in your paper towel and just smear it off. So let's continue that and we'll move on to the next step after. Alright, after your first pass with the makeup, your mask should look something like this. The next steps are going to be getting all the little cuts added and getting the caulk put in. So let's go ahead and get that started. So in the rotting Ozzfest Jester, Jim has a few slits in the nose from where the mask started rotting, notably on the nose by the eye, by the nostrils, and then there's other spots that he got holes that ended up being covered in caulk. So essentially what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take our mask off the head and start drawing the cuts in. Notably on this picture here, you can see that nose cut probably the best out of most of the pictures. So you're essentially just going to find you a reference picture and use your pencil that you used earlier, trace it on, and try to get it as accurate as you possibly can. It's okay to mess up because if you're using a pencil, you can just smudge it right off and it'll actually blend in with that weathering. As you can see, I did that there. And then you just keep tracing it and repositioning it until you are happy with it. And you can always adjust your cut a little bit later, but it's always best to have some sort of reference drawn. So once you get that drawn on there, we're going to just go ahead and draw all the other marks on where we're going to cut. And then the next stage is getting the caulk on there. Alright, so now that your mask is off the head and all of your cut lines are drawn on, we're just going to go ahead and take an X-Acto knife to get all of our cuts started as I show you here. And you're just going to want to push into the mask, make a little slit, and then take some small scissors and just kind of go in there and trim it out. You're going to repeat this process with all of the cut marks that you drew on, and then after that I will show y'all how to apply the caulk. One quick tip I wanted to mention before adding the caulk is that anywhere that has a hole that will have caulk applied, use some sort of tape to back the mask. That way you don't run the risk of applying caulk and having it rip out after because it's stuck to the head. So with all that being said, throw your mask on ahead and let's get started on the next step. Alright guys, so your next step is going to be applying the caulk. Super easy, just go ahead and take some white caulk. This is what I had. You don't have to use this brand or this specific type, just as long as it's white and as long as it'll cure relatively quick. What you're going to want to do is just go ahead and get that along with some popsicle sticks or a sculpting tool or some sort of flat tool to go ahead and apply it with. And from there, all you do is just squeeze a little bit in a cup like shown here. And then from there, you're just going to want to take your tool and apply it somewhat generously in all the spots that you cut out. Now you're going to notice that once I apply it, I sort of just kind of put it in there and use the cleaned end of the stick to wipe some away and just kind of add some texture and everything like that. Go back and look at your reference, see how it looks, try to match it as close as you can. You're also going to notice that I add a little bit by the stitching on this left eye over here. There's a photo of Jim's mask lying with the rest of the masks in a group shot that shows a little bit of that caulk texture around that eye. So pay close attention to little small details like that and it'll help make your mask that much more accurate. So just go ahead and repeat this process in all the other holes and then we'll move on to the next step. And to do the nose is similar to the rest of it. You just take a generous amount and you just check your reference photos and you just kind of smear it around on there, and spots that need to be smoothened out, just take a little bit of water on your finger, as you'll see me do a little bit later in this clip, and just match it the best you can. Alright guys, so now that you've applied your caulk, you just kind of go in there and do a few little touch-ups. And this is where I mentioned a minute ago that I like to just dip my finger in a little bit of water and Just kind of smooth it down and shape it the best I can to where it fits that nose shape, and it fits as accurately as I can based on the photos of Jim's mask and whatnot. Also, don't be afraid to be very generous with this caulk, because as you wet your finger down and smooth it down, you're going to end up taking some off anyways. So go ahead and let that dry for 30 minutes to an hour, or overnight if you have to, and then you can move on to the next stage, which is staining. Alright guys, so now that the caulking is nice and dry, we're going to go ahead and move on to the staining. First, we're going to do that dark yellow nicotine colored stain. What I'm going to go ahead and use is my Tim Gore Bloodline Injury Ochre. You can use any sort of yellow ochre acrylic paint that you have. I'm also going to use Decay to darken everything up, but you can also use any kind of brown paint that you have as well. You're more than welcome to take a brush and thin the paint down and do paint washes over the whole thing. If you don't know what a paint wash is, that's just watering your paint down and brushing it all over and then just dabbing it away with the paper towel. I'm not going to do that method in this video. I will show y'all how to do that in other videos. I'm just going to use my airbrush like I'm showing you here. Just low PSI, 20, 30 PSI, and then just continuously keep moving and spray it all over the whole mask. Now keep in mind when spraying these colors on there that you do want to leave them a little bit spotty. It is okay to see some of that white underneath, as these masks rot very organically, so no two spots will rot exactly the same, so you just want to leave it a little bit spotty, but you still want to get enough coverage to achieve that rotted look to where you're happy with it. I went in with a little bit more yellow here just to kind of darken up a few spots that I thought were looking a little bit too clean. So after that, let your yellow dry, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the other color. Alright, so now that you have your dark yellow in a spot where you want it, now you're going to go in with your brown. Like I said, in my case, I'm using Tim Gore's Bloodline Decay. I do a little back bubble trick in my airbrush like this just to kind of get the paint and a little bit of water mixed up. And you're going to go ahead and repeat the same process. You're going to hit all around the whole thing, darkening spots that you feel need to be darkened. Like I said, keep your hand moving, keep your airbrush moving, that way nothing builds up too much. And yeah, I will see y'all when the brown is done. Alright, now that your brown is done and you've reached a point to where you're happy with the mask and feel like it has that rotting look, go ahead and take some of your sealant. I'm using Flex Gloss like we used in part 1 of the video, and I'm just hitting the whole mask all over to get that paint sealed up. Go ahead and let that dry, and we'll move on to the next step from there. Alright guys, now that your mask is all sealed up, we're going to go ahead and repeat step 1 of this weathering process, which is going to be to add a little bit more black makeup on top. So let's go ahead and get to that, and then we'll be moving on to the next step after that, which is getting your rivets ready for rusting. Alright guys, so at this stage the mask is really starting to take shape and have that rotted look. The next step we're going to do is going to be some rusting. So to rust your rivets you're going to need a few tools, preferably a Dremel tool if you have it with a sanding bit. If you don't have it, regular sandpaper is okay. You're going to need a few cups. One of them has some sea salt in it. You're going to need some hydrogen peroxide and some white distilled vinegar. So what I like to do ahead of time is I like to go ahead and mix my peroxide with my sea salt. This is going to be your rusting solution. So go ahead and let some of that salt get dissolved in there. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and start sanding our rivets down. Make sure if you're using a Dremel tool to sand your rivets down that you wear a respirator, because you don't want any of that rivet cap dust in your lungs. Essentially all we're going to be doing is sanding down the surface of the rivet, exposing that metal underneath, and that's what will be getting rusted. I'll show you a little bit closer. So all we're going to be doing is scraping that top coat off, and from there we will apply our rusting solution. So you're going to want to go ahead and take your Dremel tool or your sandpaper or whatever you have and just start getting that top layer off. So I will show you here, and from here, after you get this done, we can move on to the next step and get those rivets nice and rusted. Alright guys, so now that you have that top coat sanded off of all of your rivets, now we're going to go ahead and take some of our white distilled vinegar and then take a Q-tip and clean off all the surfaces of the rivets. All this does is prep your rivets to be open to that hydrogen peroxide and sea salt mixture and allow them to rust properly. Don't worry, by doing this your mask will not smell like vinegar. Your shop might, that you're doing the mask in, for a little bit, but no worries, the mask itself will not. So go ahead and get that done and we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so now that you've cleaned off the surface on all of your rivets and you let the vinegar completely dry, now you're going to go ahead and take your peroxide and sea salt mixture and go ahead and repeat the same process like you did with the vinegar. Only now when you do this, you'll see in real time that the rust immediately starts to form. It starts to have a reaction with the peroxide and the vinegar and the exposed metals. So go ahead and repeat this step and then you'll have a nice rusted, rotting looking mask. Alright, so after you've repeated that step on every rivet, your mask should look something like this. If you desire a little bit heavier of a rusting, go ahead and let these dry and repeat that peroxide salt mixture on every rivet again. So we're going to let this dry and then we'll show you what the mask looks like now. Alright guys, and just like that, the rust is cured and your mask is complete. You now have your very own Rotting Ozzfest 99 Slipknot Jester. If you followed along to this tutorial as well as part 1, thank you very much. I absolutely appreciate you. I hope you found these videos to be informative, and I hope it helped you to make your very own mask just like this one. If you enjoy this type of content, go ahead and leave me a like and go ahead and subscribe so I know to do more like it in the future. And go ahead and drop me a comment and tell me what other types of conversions you'd like to see, and maybe what other type of content you'd like to see me branch out to. I would love to offer y'all a variety of different stuff on this channel and try to be just as informative as I was for these types of videos. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video. I show more detailed shots of this mask, and I have all the other socials at the very end, and they will be linked below. Alright, thanks you guys for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Later, guys.